Zevulon lechof yamim yishkoin. He will dwell on the coast of the seas. Superfluous 2 letters asks the Ben Ish Chai. Lechof yamim, how many oceans? Why can't you say lechof yam yishkoin? What's yamim? Why plural? Seas? Lechof yam yishkoin. Says the Ben Ish Chai, because there's 2 different types of oceans. There's the physical one. That's where Zevulon goes to work. He's a merchant. But there's another water. What is that? Yam Talmud. And since Zevulon supports Yissachar's Torah, he is actually found in both seas. He's in the sea of Talmud and he is in the physical sea. That's the advantage of Zevulon. So if a person is supporting of Yissachar's Torah, the Masechtas that he never learned. When he goes upstairs after 120, he will find that he knows Zvachim and he knows Chulin and he knows Bechoires and he knows Erchin and all the Masechtas that he never came to, even if he never learned Megillah and Shabbos and whatever it is, they will be registered on his name as well. So Issachar and Zevulon support each other. Issachar learns, he shares his Torah. Zevulon supports Issachar and shares his money. But is this appropriate to have a Issachar-Zevulon agreement? It seems as if Issachar is learning only to be supported by Zevulon. Is it appropriate for Issachar to agree to this arrangement? Or is something that it works, but we should recommend to the Issachar, stay away? Who says? Mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma, you're starting to learn. We're hoping that you're going to learn, but here it's a constant lo lishma. Every single month you're getting the paycheck, and that's the lo lishma that makes sure you're going to stay in the lo lishma realm.
No, but I mean, if you get to the point where you start enjoying the learning so much that you feel you can continue it anyhow.
If he loved it so much, why does he need his Zevulon to support him? HaKadosh Baruch Hu will support him. What's wrong with his bitachon? So he should stop after a few months when he's really into it and he loves the learning. It looks like, from the outside at least, as if Issachar is only learning to be supported by Zevulon. Should we recommend to Yissachars to be supported by their Zvulons? Is it a good idea, this arrangement? It works. We know it works. But is it a good idea? Chaim Volozhin said, first of all, if you don't want to do this agreement, it shows as if you're stingy. You don't want to give a part of your Torah to Zevulon. Eino tzara be'achiv. Why not give part of your Torah to your brother? And more than that, if he is not going to be supported, ultimately he will have to leave the yeshiva. He will have to start working. Half a day, a full day, I don't know what. And what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu really want? HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants him out of the yeshiva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be more Torah in the world. So by agreeing to do this agreement, he is staying in the yeshiva. He gives the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's nachas. He is able to give part of his Torah to Zevulun. And Zevulun now has a part in Torah that otherwise he wouldn't have. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want that. Of course HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it. So you have a lot of nachas that you give to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a machlokes, when one does this agreement, does he actually lose 50% of his reward? He actually give 50% of your Torah and the Torah reward to Zevulun who supports you, or not? Big machlokes. So somebody once came to the Chazon Ish, and he said, listen, life is very difficult. Very difficult. I have a lot of children. It's very difficult. But there is a Zevulun that wants to support me. Should I do it or not? And according to the side that says that you actually lose 50% of the reward, maybe it's not kedai. It's kedai for me to continue living in poverty. But then the next world, my reward will be immense. It will be complete. Why should I lose half of my Torah? According to this side that says you do lose half. The Chazon Ish told him, for learning Torah, you need Mesirus Nefesh. Your Mesirus Nefesh is to give up half of the world to come. But what do you think? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to punish you because you're willing to do Mesirus Nefesh and giving half of your reward? HaKadosh Baruch Hu will compensate you mistam double. Maybe 4 times as much. So mainly you're not losing. You're losing because technically speaking, according to that side, you're giving half of your Torah. But you're doing Mesirus Nefesh. You know what HaKadosh Baruch Hu pays for Mesirus Nefesh for Torah? Maybe you're not going to lose. Since we mentioned Reb Chaim Volozhin, because he said the previous answer, in Yeshiva of Volozhin, the secretary would always open up the private letters of the guys in the yeshiva. They were fighting the Enlightenment movement back then. And they were afraid, who knows who's sending, what they're sending. They wanted to protect the kids. The guys didn't like it. Some people were married as well. They really didn't like it. One day, the secretary comes to one of the guys, an avrech, sitting there. His wife is somewhere, I don't know where, different country. And he says, you get a mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov. He says, mazel tov, why mazel tov to me? Your wife, she gave birth. You have a baby boy. And this guy looks at him and he says, but which wife? The first or the second? Chaya or Rachel? And the secretary looks at him and says, what? Don't you know you're not allowed to marry more than one wife? And the guy says, I thought Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom also applies on not opening private letters. Does this agreement, Issachar and Zevulon, help in other mitzvahs as well? Or is it limited to Talmud Torah? Talmud Torah, we know it works. But I want to do an agreement with a Zevulon, Issachar, will share our mitzvahs. Everything, not just limited to Torah. There's another 612 other mitzvahs. Does it work for other mitzvahs as well? Rabbeinu Achido, Sefer Shem HaGdolim, brings that he saw handwriting of Reb Chaim Vital that says, I found a letter from Reb Yehuda, the son of the Rosh. So we're going back to the Rishonim, who says the following. Reb Yechiel, who was the father of the Rosh, in other words, Reb Yehuda is his grandson, had an agreement with his best friend. His best friend, his name was Reb Shlomo Cohen, and he had an agreement with him. They made a contract that they will share all their mitzvahs and good deeds. When Reb Yechiel died, the father of the Rosh dies, the grandfather of Reb Yehuda, the son of the Rosh. He died. So they schlepped the coffin and they got to the cemetery, and the Chidah says there was a minhag by Ashkenaz at that point, that when you travel with the coffin, when you get to the cemetery, you actually open it to make sure that the deceased is actually lying there flat, and because of the travel, nothing moved and nothing broke, nothing. They opened it, and Reb Yechiel, who just passed away, started laughing. Reb Shlomo HaKohen comes close, that's his best buddy, and says, I'm just reminding my dear friend here, Reb Yechiel, who passed away, don't forget about our agreement. And Reb Yechiel is laughing. The Maharsham writes that you cannot share your mitzvahs, it doesn't work, only for Talmud Torah. And he says that Reb Shlomo Kluger told him that that's the reason Reb Yechiel was laughing. Because now that he's dead, he understands it doesn't work. This agreement that we signed on is meaningless. Mainly that's why he was laughing. It only works, Yisachar Zvulun to Talmud Torah. It does not work in other areas as well. So we spoke about Zvulun that supports Torah and his Maila. There's a few other things related. Does the Zvulun really get only 50%? We spoke till now about Yisachar's side. But what about Zvulun? Does he get 50%? Or he gets 100%. The Or HaChaim HaKodesh, the Chidah, the Bnei Yisachar, and the Hagdama of the Hafla to Maseret Ksubis, they all say, somehow, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is able to take $1, to split it in two, and yet each one gets $1. How? HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do that. We can't. You take $1, you break it in two, you have 50% here and 50%. Somehow HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives $1, and it stays $1 to two people. It's the same thing with a husband and wife. She supports his Torah and she sends him to learn. She gets fully rewarded, even though she never sat and learned. But she has a chelik in his Torah. But she doesn't get 50%. She gets 100%. While her husband gets 100% as well. So somehow Kodesh Baruch Hu can take $1 and break it into two, and each one gets 100. The Chidah asks a question. What if the Zvulun supports a Yisachar that learns Lo Lishma? He learns. He's enjoying all the money that Zvulun gives him, but he's not learning Lishma. Will the Zvulun be rewarded as if the Yisachar sat and learned Lishma? Or he gets paid as a Yisachar that was learning, not Lishma. The Yisachar is definitely going to be rewarded only as a person who learned Lo Lishma. But what about the Zvulun? Says the Chidon Pnei David, the Zvulun will be rewarded exactly like a person who spent money on a Yisachar that learned Lishma. And the Chassam Sofer writes, it's the greatest investment in the world. How exactly is the Zvulun supposed to know that Yisachar is learning not Lishma? He can go into his heart and check what's going on there? He can't. So Mimele, since he is forced to continue paying to the Yisachar thinking he's learning Lishma, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to punish him, and he rewards him exactly as if he was supporting a person who's learning Lishma. So you can't lose. Shal Tshuvas Beis Shlomo says the same thing. So we have three Gedolei Olam, the Chidach, Stam Sefer, and Shal Tshuvas Beis Shlomo. Yevamos Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Kol Talmid Chochem. If you say you said Dvar Torah in the name of a Talmid Chochem who's no longer here, what happens to the lips of that Talmid Chochem? Somehow the lips are moving. The Zevulon that supports the Issachar. Issachar died. And now I'm saying a Dvar Torah in the name of the Issachar. Yisachar's lips are going to be moving in the grave. When Zevulon dies, will his lips also move in the grave? Says the Chidah, yes. It's unbelievable. The Hafla writes this in the Akdama Tuksubis. The Chofetz Chaim writes this. The Griz doesn't agree, but you have a strong coalition. By the way, it's very important to know what that really means. What does that mean? Sfaisav, lips are moving in the grave. How does that work? Comes the Sefer Hasidim in Simin Reish Chaf Dalet, and he says, Sfasav doivos bakever means that up there, wherever that tzaddik is, he's actually going to daven for the person that said Dvar Torah in his name, and he's going to be a good advocate on his behalf. So it's very, very kedai to learn Torah of great tzaddikim, because now they're standing there and davening for you. You're forcing that tzaddik to daven for you and to be a good advocate on your behalf.
Here we asked if the Zevulon gets Issachar for this Issachar's Eim Shema. Does the wife get Issachar for the husband's Eim Shema?
If she supports him in his learning and she pushes him to go learn, what can she do? There's no way for me to find out how the other person is learning. So you're in your be'oines and you're doing the right thing. There's no difference between her and the Zevulon. Is Zevulon saved from Yetzer Hara? When one learns Torah, he is saved from Yetzer Hara. Zevulon is not learning. He is supporting Issachar who's learning. Is he also protected from Yetzer Hara? Says the Chidah and Pnei David, yes. Mamish unbelievable miles to the Zevulon who supports Torah.